Roken, standing in the control room of the Yedix-9 colony, stared intently at the main screen. The image of a massive Zynar battleship dominated the display, inching closer with every passing second. The tension in the room was palpable, with every officer and soldier on high alert. "Commander, they've broken through our outer defenses," reported Lieutenant Kane, his voice laced with urgency. Roken didn't flinch. "Prepare the ion cannons. We'll hit them with everything we've got." The room buzzed with activity as the crew rushed to execute his orders. Roken knew that this moment would determine the fate of the colony. Yedix-9 wasn't just any outpost, it was a symbol of human resilience on the edge of Zynar-controlled space. On the command bridge of the Zynar battleship, Supreme Commander Valdros observed the human colony with a mix of contempt and curiosity. To him, humans were a lesser species, barely worth his attention. But their defiance, their audacity to resist, intrigued him. "Destroy their defenses," Valdros ordered, his voice cold and emotionless. As the Zynar ship began its attack, Roken's voice rang out through the colony's loudspeakers. "All units, this is Commander Roken. We are humanity's first and last line of defense here. We hold this ground, or we lose everything. No retreat." The first barrage from the Zynar ship struck, shaking the entire colony. Explosions rocked the structure, but the ion cannons fired back, their beams slicing through the darkness of space and hitting the Zynar vessel. The battle had begun. The sky above Yedix-9 was ablaze with energy blasts and debris as the two forces clashed. Roken, leading the defense from the ground, coordinated the colony's response with precision. He knew the Zynar's tactics, relentless, overpowering, but predictable. As the battle raged on, Roken's voice remained calm, giving orders, directing fire, and ensuring that every shot counted. His determination inspired his soldiers, who fought with everything they had. The Zynar forces were formidable, but the humans were fighting for their very survival. In the midst of the chaos, Roken spotted a weakness in the Zynar ship's defenses. He immediately seized the opportunity. "Focus fire on Grid 7G. We can breach their shields." The coordinated attack worked. The Zynar ship's shields flickered, and a massive explosion erupted from its side. The tide of the battle began to turn. Inside the Zynar ship, alarms blared as the crew scrambled to control the damage. Valdros, seeing the situation deteriorate, clenched his fists in frustration. How could these humans, so primitive in his eyes, pose such a challenge? But it was too late. The human forces had gained the upper hand, and the Zynar ship was now vulnerable. Valdros had no choice but to order a retreat. As the Zynar battleship limped away, Roken and his team celebrated their hard-won victory. But Roken knew this was just the beginning. The Zynar would return, and next time, they would come with even greater force. "We did it, Commander," Lieutenant Kane said, breathing heavily. Roken nodded, his expression serious. "We've won this battle, but the war is far from over. We need to prepare for what's coming." The crew of Yedix-9 understood the weight of his words. This victory was sweet, but the future held many more battles. And they would need to be ready. The battle was over, but the air inside the command center was still thick with tension. Roken stood at the central console, his eyes scanning the damage reports flooding in from across the colony. The Zynar ship had retreated, but it had left devastation in its wake. "Casualty reports are coming in, Commander," Lieutenant Kane said quietly, handing Roken a datapad. Roken's jaw tightened as he read the list of names. Each one represented a life lost, a family torn apart. He took a deep breath, pushing the pain aside. There would be time to mourn later. For now, there was work to be done. Send medical teams to sectors 4 and 7. They were hit the hardest. Prioritize the wounded and start repairing critical systems immediately, Roken ordered, his voice steady despite the exhaustion gnawing at him. As the crew moved to carry out his orders, Roken turned his attention to the tactical map displayed on the main screen. The Zynar ship had retreated, but it wouldn't be long before they returned. This was just the first wave. He knew that the real fight was yet to come. In the medical bay, chaos reigned. Doctors and medics worked frantically to stabilize the wounded. Blood stained the floors, and the air was filled with the sounds of pain and desperation. Despite the grim scene, there was no panic, only grim determination. Roken entered the bay, his presence commanding immediate attention. He moved from bed to bed, offering words of comfort to the injured soldiers. Many of them were young, barely more than kids, and the horror of battle was still fresh in their eyes. "You fought well," Roken said to one of the soldiers, a young man with a bandaged arm. "Rest now. We'll need you again soon." The soldier nodded weakly, a flicker of pride breaking through the pain. Roken continued on, stopping briefly to speak with the chief medic, Dr. Alera, who was coordinating the efforts. "How bad is it?" Roken asked, though he could already see the answer in the doctor's tired eyes. "We've lost too many, and there are more in critical condition," Dr. Alera replied, her voice strained. "But we're holding on. We'll do what we can." Roken placed a hand on her shoulder. "Thank you, Alera. Your work is saving lives. Keep at it." Later, back in the command room, Roken gathered his senior officers for a debrief. The holographic map of the surrounding star systems hovered above the central table, showing the Zynar fleet's likely paths of approach. "We've delayed them, but they'll regroup and strike again," Roken began, his tone grim. "We need to reinforce our defenses and prepare for their return." Captain Thane, the head of security, spoke up. "Our shields held, but just barely. We'll need to divert more power to them if we want to withstand another assault. Most of our heavy artillery is still operational, but we're running low on munitions." "Resupply is a priority," Lieutenant Kane responded. Roken nodded. "Agreed. We'll also need to consider evacuation protocols for the civilians if the worst happens." "I don't want to, but we need to be prepared." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. They all knew what an evacuation would mean, a last resort, an admission that they couldn't hold the colony. "We're not giving up this place," Roken said, reading the room. "But we'll protect our people first. Start drafting the plans, but make sure they're a last resort." Far away, on the damaged Zynar battleship, Supreme Commander Valdros seethed with anger. The humans had surprised him, their resistance far more formidable than he had anticipated. He would not underestimate them again. "Prepare the fleet for a full-scale assault," Valdros ordered his subordinates. "We will return to Yedix-9, and this time, we will leave nothing but ashes." The Zynar officers bowed and hurried to carry out his commands. Valdros turned to the viewport, staring out into the void of space. The humans had won this round, but their victory would be short-lived. "I will crush you, Roken," Valdros muttered to himself. "And your colony will be the first to fall." I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.